Have you ever wondered what Hashimoto disease is? Or have you wondered about black mold in your body? Then you want to watch this story. Lucy explains everything. Hi, welcome back to the Primal Lifestyle. And today's special guest is Lucy Barker, who I followed on TikTok, and her story is amazing. So, Lucy, for the people that don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. So I'm Lucy. I was diagnosed 2 years ago with Hashimoto's and celiac disease. But prior to that, I kind of had a lot of health issues throughout my life, even as a child. So it's been like an onward journey. But since I got that diagnosis, that's when I've kind of felt more empowered and taken over control with my health.
So for those that don't know, do you want to explain what Hashimoto's is?
Yeah, so Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease where your body attacks your thyroid mistakenly. And often people will end up with more than one autoimmune disease because once your body's finished attacking that tissue, it will then move on to something else. So often you have multiple autoimmune diseases if you've got one. So I have two. Celiac disease is also an autoimmune disease, and that's where your body attacks your tissue whenever you eat gluten. And Hashimoto's and celiac disease do often go together as well.
Okay, so when I first came across you, you were in Australia. You're now back, and you had your TikTok there, which I know you, because of change of location, you had to almost start again, which is a bit of a pain, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
tell us a little about your journey there when you discovered it. What you decided to do, because you obviously went on a similar diet that I went on, and
Yeah.
obviously got similar results. So tell us your story.
Yeah. So once I was diagnosed, which was an amazing thing to get, I feel like I'd spent my whole life trying to get a diagnosis as I knew something wasn't right. And no doctors kind of gave me that. So I was so grateful when I did get the diagnosis finally from a doctor. But their way of dealing with it is just to prescribe medication, which uses levothyroxine because Hashimoto's then attacks your thyroid. So then you become hyperthyroid. So your thyroid isn't working. So you need replacement hormone. So once I was given that, I didn't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. I try to do things holistically if I can. So yeah, once I'd been given that diagnosis, sent on my way with the tablets, I thought this is where I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. And I did so much research. I found a lot of great information from the thyroid pharmacist who's called Isabella Wentz. And she recommended an autoimmune protocol diet where you cut out a lot of potentially allergen and inflammatory causing foods. So that's gluten, dairy, corn, soy, nuts, and seeds, but you can still eat vegetables, but it's recommended not to eat cruciferous vegetables. So that was the diet that I started, and I found a lot of information on TikTok, and it can be quite lonely, especially when at my age, to then suddenly have to completely change my lifestyle, cut out drinking alcohol, coffee, like everything kind of had to change in my life. And I wasn't able to go out and eat normally. And although the autoimmune protocol diet isn't as extreme as a restrictive diet that I do now, and that I found the healing with, it was still quite restrictive. So that's when I turned to TikTok and Instagram to find other people who had been through similar things and who were sharing their journey to feel less alone. And I always said to myself, if I found healing, then I would share my journey to help other people. And that was when I'd found Michaela Peterson as well. And she does the Lion Diet, which is just ruminant meat, salt, and water. And after I'd done the autoimmune protocol diet for a year, my Hashimoto's antibodies hadn't reduced at all. And that's when I decided to do the Lion Diet. And then that's when my whole life kind of changed. And I feel like I got my health back and got my life back.
That's fantastic. So I'm just going to flash up a couple of pictures that you've shared with me,
Yeah.
and if you can just talk us through. So, is this to do with the Hashimoto's, whether you get the redness on the throat, etc.?
Yeah, so that can be a symptom of Hashimoto's. So I would get this red rash, which you can see in the picture on my neck. And even when I was doing the autoimmune protocol diet, which is meant to be reduce everything that could be inflammatory, I was still getting these rashes. So I'm not sure if that can be determined down to vegetables or the oxalates and things like that, but I was still having these kind of reactions like psoriasis on my fingers. And when I had this rash there, I'd actually been to see an endocrinologist and she referred me to see a rheumatologist. about the
Right.
rash. And that was when I started to do the Lion Diet. And within like a week, I think it was maybe 10 days, it had pretty much completely gone. And the same with
Wow.
those white patches on my arm. They completely went as well, which is
Because this
crazy to
next
have those results.
because this next photo is really sort of sums it up. So, and for especially for a young lady, it's
Yeah.
not great to have that kind of condition on your face, is it? But
Yeah.
when you look at you now, your complexion is just clear as anything. So it shows you a
Yeah.
massive difference.
Because, yeah,
So
when
sorry,
I
please.
was just going to say with the picture where I had all of the spots on my face, that was a year before I was diagnosed. And I went to the doctors then and I was having health issues. I was exhausted, couldn't get up. And the only thing they found was that my ferritin was low. But he told me that I had acne and gave me an acne cream for it. And I knew myself I didn't have acne because you don't just wake up with acne
No,
one day. And that was when I actually first started to just eat meat. So I just cut everything out. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I only did it for about 10 days and just ate meat and it went away like immediately. So it's just amazing like how therapeutic what you can eat and how much of a big difference it makes.
because it's interesting. Because obviously, when I was following you on your TikTok journey, you talked about first thing in the morning you would sit out in the sun
Yeah.
and taking the light, which you've got me doing now. I like to add my morning coffees now. If it's not pouring down a rain, it's sitting outside, taking it in, and I ended up taking my shoes and socks. Well, I don't have socks on at the time, but I just go and stand and ground myself as well. So as much as like years ago, I would have laughed at someone that done that, but I can
Yeah.
actually now see the benefit of it. So do you want to tell us a little bit, because you obviously explained then about what you used to do, what your day was about. So do you want to explain?
Yeah, so when I get up, I try to get the morning sunlight in my eyes immediately because that's just really good for regulating your circadian rhythm. And also, it helps to balance like leptin levels. And if you do the grounding as well, like putting your feet on the ground, that's really helpful for regulating your nervous system and just having that grounding element as well. So that's my favorite way to start the day. And I also do meditation or breath work. So on those days where I feel like everything's a bit hectic in my head, I find meditation quite hard. So that's when I'll often do a breath work instead. And Wim Hof has a great one that's free on YouTube. I think it's only like 10 minutes long. And that just really sets me up for the day. And then I always try and do movement as well, because I find even when I'm fatigued, that really helps. Even if it's just gentle movement, like I'd never really do HIIT workouts, which previously, before I was diagnosed, I was trying to make myself do them, and my body was so inflamed and I like just felt awful doing it. I'd have such sore muscles afterwards, which I think was from all of the inflammation as well. But obviously that can affect your cortisol levels. So gentle movement like yoga, walking, and Pilates is what I do and what feels best for my body.
So when you're having those conditions, did that affect your confidence? Were you anxious? Did you suffer sort of any sort of mental sort of anxiety, etc.?
Yeah, so from the age, I think I would have just turned 16 was when I was first diagnosed with depression and anxiety. But even as a child, I went through a phase where I had bad OCD and I was always anxious, but I just didn't know what it was. But yeah, I got first diagnosed when I was 16 and that was just given antidepressants. And I always found it ended up being a pattern. I'd go on them, I'd feel better. And it was almost in cycles that I felt like I was getting depressed and would have these like bouts of anxiety. And since I've had my diagnosis, I've done more research into it. And I spoke with a functional doctor, and he said that it could be due to whenever my body was attacking my thyroid, that can cause you to become more anxious and have effects on your mental health as well. So I think that could potentially be why, but it's hard to pinpoint because when I started doing the AIP diet and when I also then transitioned to Lion Diet and Carnivore, I haven't had any anxiety or depression since. And prior to that, it was like I was crying every single day. I didn't want to go out. And I think a lot of that was to do with my thyroid and also like the inflammatory aspects of the diet that I was consuming. So carnivore really has been amazing for me, and that's completely transformed my mental health as well.
As I say, I'm no doctor, but that sounds very much hormonal led. And,
Yeah.
thyroid's affected by hormones, your mental state's affected by hormones. And as I've said numerous times on this channel, that having high fat, that helps the cholesterol that creates the hormone. So it's a natural progression to succeed. So I'm pleased you got through that dark
Yeah.
patch for you. So you then, on your journey, on your way back to the UK, went to Thailand, and you had a change of diet because of the
Yeah.
environment. Do you want to take us through that kind of story before we get to more up to date?
Yeah, so I wanted to try. So I was doing carnivore, and then I wanted to try while I was in Thailand just to try like the local seasonal fruits. And we were doing a lot of the time, we were kind of in all inclusive packages. So I was having to kind of adapt my diet to what was available. So breakfast was normally fine, just with like bacon and eggs. And then I'd have some fruit if I wanted it. But more at dinner time was when I struggled, as in Thailand, it's a lot of rice. So when it was packages, there wasn't that much meat. And I was having to
Mm.
have it in coconut milk, which I think I'm fine with coconut milk, but obviously you don't fully know what's been put into the food. So I did actually have quite a lot of issues, not with the fruit, that was fine. And I was also wearing an insulin monitor when I first went, just so I could track to see how much things were affecting my blood sugar. So I'd always eat fat and protein first before having the fruits. Because ideally, I would love to be able to incorporate more fruits into my diet. And that seemed to be fine. But whenever I did consume rice or anything, that's when I started to get really bad bloating and issues that way. But since I've come back, I have transitioned more into an animal-based diet, just including those fruits along with the meats, and always eating in the correct order to prevent those glucose spikes. And that's worked quite well for me so far. But I do have to say, as much as I don't want to, carnivore, I think, is just like the best I've ever felt, and the Lion Diet, the best I've ever felt. And I know, like, now don't think I'm getting anything really beneficial out of the fruit, but it's more just for that enjoyment.
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of people, when that talk to me about it, say is it not too restrictive, and I think when you do add certain fruits that are not going to trigger issues, it just gives you that little bit of variety.
Yeah.
Um, so in the end of the day, as I say 100 times to people, there are no carnivore police. So if you do come off the carnivore in some way, no one's going to arrest you and drag you out of the house. So,
Yeah.
but it's for me, and an area I want to explore with you is within your TikTok. You do a lot about your skin treatment, etc. And
Yeah.
what really surprised me was the fact that you use tallow on your skin, because I had skin cancer last year and I had it removed, and I upped the amount of bone broth that I drank, which did amazing stuff for my skin. But I was really interested in what you say about tallow and how that helps.
Yeah. So yeah, for skincare, so before I was such like a consumer, I'd love to buy all of like the beauty products and stuff like that. But with everything with my thyroid, I looked more into how there's like endocrine disruptors and how that can affect your thyroid in the products that we use. Sun cream is something that's particularly full of chemicals and toxins. And I actually use an app called Yucca, which is Yuka. And you can
Mhm.
scan products when you're in shops, and that will show you, it gives it like a rating, I think, out of 100, 0 being the worst and 100 being the best. And all of the sun creams that I scanned were like marked terribly for having like cancer causing chemicals, and also those endocrine disruptors and things like that. So I started, being in Australia, you do really need to wear sun cream. So I started to create tallow. So I'd make that at home, or there was a brand that I used as well that was really good, and they just did a balm. So I'd use it on my face every day, and it does provide a little bit of skin protection, but obviously it's not like SPF at all. But there
Mhm.
are brands. So I have one called Fierce Nature, I believe it's called. Yeah, Fierce Nature. And that's a tallow mixed with zinc oxide. So that provides you with the sun cream like protection. And that doesn't have any toxins in it either. So that's kind of what I use. But it doesn't go on as nicely as the chemical SPF.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I have to have a high SPF for me, regardless if it's raining, snowing, whatever. I have to put it on every day. So I'm going to go and get that app of yours. I'm going to see this stuff that I'm putting on and what it does, and if need be to change it, because I don't want to go through that again. That was not
No.
fun. So
Yeah.
recently on your UK version of your TikTok, which I'll put the links up in the content here so people can pick up and find you. You mentioned about you recently had some more checks done and you discovered a few things that you have inside. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, so I've always thought, because I haven't really been able to get full like into full remission with my Hashimoto's, my antibodies are still present. They're a lot lower than they were. And the only thing that's been able to get them down is carnivore. The autoimmune protocol diet didn't change them, but they're still there. And I still do have days where I feel like I'm in a flare up and I can't pinpoint why. So I looked more into root cause healing. And with that came up black mold. And at the time when my symptoms were really bad and when I first got diagnosed, our house was moldy that I was living in. And I didn't really realize at the time how bad it was. And also growing up as a child, the ensuite bathroom to my room had mold in it as well. And we would clean it and get it off, but there was mold there. And it just kind of is a thing with living in an old house. So that had been in the back of my mind. And I actually listened to a podcast with Lady Carnivore, and I follow her on Instagram. And she was posting a lot of things about the VCS test, which you can do to see if you have mold or other toxins in your body. And I thought, I'm just going to give that a go. I read into it and thought, she was saying on this podcast, if you do carnivore, it can mask some symptoms that you're having because it is so anti-inflammatory that then when you go to reintroduce other foods, you do have flare-ups and issues, and that it could be down to a root cause issue. So I did this VCS test, which you can do online. And it's a kind of a vision test. So it has these lines on it, and you have to look and see which way they're bending because it can change the way that you process things in your mind if you have these toxins. And I failed the test. And then it also asks you about symptoms that you have. And if you have multiple symptoms, I think there's 7 boxes. And if you have one in each box, that's a really high chance that you have a toxin present. So it can be like mold or Lyme's disease and things like that. So mine was really high. I'd scored nearly all of the symptoms through that VCS test. So I then saw an integrative health practitioner who confirmed it. So I'm doing a detox at the moment to try and get rid of the black mold. And she also found that I have a small parasite as well, which can be causing some issues. So I'm just doing that detox at the moment. So we'll see how that goes. But hopefully that will help answer some of my
So,
questions.
one, I never realised you could get black mold in the body from being in an environment with black mold, which is an eye opener for me. But obviously, what treatment are you then? What detox are you doing then to try and get rid of the black mold for anyone that's interested?
Yeah, so she has put me on a protocol. There is also another protocol which is recognized in the US and has been shown to treat black mold, which is called the Shoemaker protocol. However, so this is for chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which isn't recognized in the UK yet, but it is in the US. And a lot of people with autoimmune disease do also have chronic inflammatory response syndrome as kind of their root cause. So the protocol she's put me on is taking fulvic acid. So I've got that. So I've started taking that. I'm taking a supplement called Para-End for the Parasite, and then also doing like a liver support to help with the detox too. So
Wow.
I'm due to see her. I'm about 2 weeks into it now. And I have had some days where I've had like a sore throat, which can be a sign of detoxing, and where I felt more fatigued. So yeah, I'll see how that goes. But if I don't have success with this protocol, then I think I will pay the money to do the Shoemaker protocol. But it is a lot more expensive and the blood testing is quite costly as well. But if you're in the US, I know that Dr. Judy Cho does a specific like blood test package for that, and she can help guide you through the protocol as well.
Wow. Do you know, every day's a school day. I've learnt more today than I knew any of that sort of side of it. That's incredible. So, for people watching that might think they've got Hashimoto or some of the other conditions that you've had, what are the telltale signs, and then what would you advise them to do?
Yeah, so for
In
Hashimoto's,
your
one of
opinion, of course.
yeah, for Hashimoto's, one of the big symptoms for me was cold intolerance. Like I was freezing cold all the time, and I was living in Australia. It wasn't their winters are nothing compared to like English winters, which I'm used to. and I would be freezing all the time. I'd have like a heater, hot water bottle, a hoodie on, and would still be cold. So that's a really big sign. The dry skin, like I had really dry under eyes. On my neck, obviously, you saw that rash. That's another sign. Fatigue is a big one. Depression, anxiety is a big symptom of it. Brain fog. It's kind of just every bad symptom is Hashimoto's really. And I know a lot of them are similar for other autoimmune diseases as well. But if you have any of those symptoms or you feel like you may have Hashimoto's, doctors tend to just test your TSH level to see your thyroid function. But that's not going to show if you have Hashimoto's. So you really need to get the TPO antibodies and the TG antibodies tested. So you can do that privately. I actually just ordered a test online from a UK brand, and they just send it to your house, and you can do it with like a finger prick yourself to test your antibodies. So that's like a really good thing to do. If your ferritin is low as well, that's also a sign of Hashimoto's. And that was one of the first markers that showed up for me. But yeah, your TSH and your thyroid function could be within the range that doctors have, but you could still have Hashimoto's. And if you don't catch it early enough, then your body is going to attack your thyroid, and then your thyroid function, the TSH will be low, will be high, and then they'll notice that there's something going on,
Wow.
and then they might do the testing. But often it's missed, and then by the time they do, your
Damage is
TSH
done.
has is out of range, then it's kind of you've already fully into the autoimmune disease then.
So, are you hopeful then that you can almost get rid of the Hashimoto, so you don't need to be on a thyroxine or something for the rest of your life, which obviously would be the consequence if it continued?
Yeah, so with Hashimoto's, you can put it into remission. So when you're diagnosed, doctors will typically just test your antibodies once to get the diagnosis. However, and then they say that you'll never be able to get them down, which has been proven like time and time again through the Lion Diet, Carnivore diet, and a lot of people with the autoimmune protocol diet as well have managed to get their antibodies really low and back into remission. So they're not testing as positive, but you will always kind of have that susceptibility to
Mm.
Hashimoto's. But yeah, with the thyroid function, I don't know at this point how much damage has been done to my thyroid and whether I'll always have to be on some medication to get those hormones, get the T3 and the T4 hormones. But I'm hopeful that I'll definitely be able to reduce it in the future if everything keeps going the way it is. And I've seen like all my other hormones balance out as well. Like I had adrenal fatigue, zero cortisol. My ACTH was so low as well, which signals your body to create the cortisol. So I even had to have like brain scans at the time because they were worried that there was a tumor. But through doing the Lion diet and then moving on to carnivore, my cortisol levels are normal again. My body's producing the ACTH and everything's kind of leveled out. My DHEAs and all my other hormones are a lot more balanced now. So there definitely is hope. But yeah, I think
And
my main advice would be to not take it as like a life sentence if you get diagnosed. Like you can do things about it.
yeah, two people just accept a diagnosis and that's it. They just live their lives like it. So good for you for a bit. I mean, you look radiant at the moment. I mean, so clearly your body's in a good place in that respect. Without being sort of too personal here, but was your cycle affected as well? And did you have issues on it? Because I did see some correspondence you had with someone a few weeks ago or whatever about that. I mean, did the carnivore help with that, or was that just something that naturally came back? Or tell us, explain.
Yeah, so it was irregular before I was diagnosed, and then when I was doing the autoimmune protocol diet, I pretty much didn't have a cycle. It was very irregular, like maybe once every 4 or 5 months, if that.
Oh
And
wow.
the endocrinologist that I was seeing at the time said that whenever I did get my cycle, she didn't think that I was ovulating and that it was more of just like a breakthrough bleed. So once I started doing the Lion diet and then so I did the Lion diet for 90 days, I think, and then I transitioned into carnivore. I think it was within like 4 months that I got it back. And from December last year, it's been regular every month and no pain either. So it's been the carnivore diet's definitely what's brought it back, I think.
Yeah, because Dr. Kiltz talks about, he's a fertility doctor, about that when he got people on carnivore, how they turn their fertility around and end up getting pregnant and later. So be careful, girl.
Yeah.
So, no, but that's brilliant. So, Lucy, you've been an absolute star. Is there anything you want to add or anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about in your story or for people that are watching this to understand?
No, I feel like we've covered everything, but yeah, just if anyone is experiencing anything, they can always reach out and message me. Like, I love to chat to other people and hopefully help them as well. But yeah, just like what I said before, if you do have that diagnosis, like, try not to be disheartened. It's almost, I know for me, when I got diagnosed, that was really validating to me because I'd kind of been told my whole life that it was all in my head. So just to like really trust your own opinion, like trust your gut, and that you can then kind of empower yourself. And there's so much information now online and so many stories of people who've healed from illnesses a lot worse than mine as well. So yeah, just that there's always hope out there. And yeah.
That's a brilliant way to finish it. Brilliant. Thank you. I will put a link to your TikTok. You say you've got Instagram as well. I can put a link to that as well on this as well if you wish, so people can follow you.
Yeah,
And
that would be
because you
great.
do have a really interesting, you do a fairly much a daily update, and it's interesting, and I think I wish you well on everything. So thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you for
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Please remember and subscribe.